She explained to me that there were two separate events during which he was burned. The first one happening somewhere 3 to 5 days before the second one. And she reported the first time crawling in their living room. And as he was crawling, he put his hand on a sock or something and his hand slipped out from under him and he fell onto the grate of the heater, which had a large grate in the center of their living room. And she assumes that the heater was either on at that time or had recently turned off, so the grate was hot. And he was burned that time. And she described to me that he had small burns on one of his hands, I think his knee, a small burn on his belly, and maybe one of his elbows from that event. And then the second episode of burn, which happened on the day before he came to the hospital, he'd been standing or walking, holding on to the edge of the couch and had apparently tripped and fallen onto the grate. And she reported that she didn't see him fall and she couldn't exactly explain to me what position he was in, but she reports picking him up off of the grate and seeing burns to all of the rest of the body that I had described before.
Welcome to Gavel Gossip, where courtroom drama meets cold, hard truth. Today's case, a baby, severely burned. Not once, but twice. The culprit, a floor heating grate. The allegation, neglect. How does a child suffer the same injury twice under the same roof? Where was the care, the protection, the basic responsibility every child deserves? Was this a tragic accident or something far more disturbing? We're skipping the legal fluff. No motions, no objections, just raw testimony, straight from the mother on the stand. This isn't just a trial. This is Gavel Gossip, justice, unfiltered. Let's get into it.
You and your husband were both on opposite ends of the couch, correct?
Yes.
And was he in the floor?
Yes.
Was he crawling, holding on to the sofa, or was he just crawling on the floor?
He was just crawling on the floor.
And that's when you said you think your husband said had a sock in his hand?
I believe so. I didn't see how exactly it happened. I was doing something else, but also keeping an eye on him.
But did Mr. Yates say that had a sock in his hand while he was crawling?
Yes.
So if I understand it correctly from what he said, then he was crawling with a sock in his hand, and the sock being in his hand caused that hand to slip out from under him, and he fell on the furnace. Is that what you understand?
That's what I understand.
Now let's talk about the second burn. You were
Yes, sir.
were you on the end of the sofa closest to the furnace or the other end of the sofa?
The other end.
All right. And is this the time he was walking, kind of hanging on to the couch?
He was walking along the couch like he was standing on the floor next to the couch and using the couch.
All right. Yeah. Using the couch to keep his balance.
Yes.
So if you're on one end and he was walking along, he must have been walking along. He passed you and he was hanging onto the sofa and then he fell onto the furnace. Does that sound right?
No, he was on the floor and he was playing in the floor, like in front of me and slightly to my right in the area that we have between the couch and the TV.
So if he's on the floor, then he wasn't walking when he fell onto the furnace the second time.
Yes, sir. Let me clarify.
Yeah.
So he was originally playing in the floor. He had pulled up like just moments before he fell. Like I would say within 5 minutes, whenever he used the couch to pull up, and then he fell.
So he was on his feet, holding onto the couch when he fell.
Yes.
And he fell onto the furnace.
Yes.
All right. That's all I had. Does anyone have further questions for Ms. Faith?
No, Your Honor.
All right, then. Ms. Lucero, did you have any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor, I do not.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Nowak, any witnesses?
Call Dr. Callie Crouch, please, Judge.
Dr. Crouch, this is Judge Graham. If you could unmute, please.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can. Thank you. If you'd raise your right hand, do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, ma'am. You may proceed, Mr. Nowak.
Thank you, Judge. Dr. Crouch, it's nice to kind of meet you kind of in person.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking my phone calls over these last couple of weeks. Would you state your name, please?
So my name's Callie Ann Crouch.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a nurse practitioner.
And what is your educational background?
I have 2 masters, and then I also have a doctorate of nursing practice
And where is your current practice?
in Miami, Texas.
And how long have you been there?
3.5 years.
Prior to that, were you in school?
And prior to that, I did work in Pampa for about 2 years, probably.
Doing?
A nurse practitioner.
Are you familiar with Yates?
Yes.
Are you familiar with his mom and dad, Jason being the dad and Jessica being the mom?
Yes, I am more familiar with Jesse. But yes, I'm familiar with both.
Have you been a healthcare professional since his birth?
Yes.
Approximately how many times have you seen since he was born?
And I have seen him for all of his wellness visits. Let's see, we've seen him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times.
And in those 12 times, you would have seen either his mom or dad with him, correct?
Yes.
Did they ever come together?
I don't think so. I think it was primarily just Jesse that came in with him.
Based upon your observations of Jessie when she brings in, what would you just tell us what your observations are?
I mean, she's attentive. She talks with him, plays with him. She seems like she is concerned about keeping him safe, making sure he's not anywhere unattended where he might get hurt.
Now, what have been your observations during the visits?
He's always
with a second on a hot vent or heater vent. They have to sit there for a minute.
it probably depends on how long the heater's been on, because I can't speak to how hot the grate was at the time when he was on it.
Miss Faith didn't bring into you after the first burn injury. Is that correct?
Correct.
So you didn't see that burn.
No, I did not.
Were you aware of it?
I was not aware of it until after the second.
And then the second time, the ambulance took the child into Pampa. Do you practice in the Pampa hospital?
I do not. They went to the emergency department.
So you didn't see the child then either, did you?
No.
And when you saw the child on the 19th, was this child still recovering from the burns?
No, they were fully healed.
Were there burn scars?
Yes.
Where were those scars located?
To the lateral left thigh, I believe the forearms and the abdomen.
And I apologize, I'm trying to find those pictures. But they were clearly vent marks,
Yes.
crosshatch on
Yes.
his body.
Yes.
And it was on his side, on his chest area, and on his leg area.
Yeah, on the abdomen and the leg.
Thank you, doctor. It's not doctor, it's Nurse Crouch. Is that right? Or how do you say that?
Well, I have my doctorate, so you can use doctor. Prefer.
Because you're not a medical doctor, though. You're a nurse practitioner.
Correct.
And do you have any specialties in pediatric harm?
No, I'm just family nurse practitioner.
Thank you. I'll pass it to you.
All right, Ms. Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Dr. Crouch, whenever you saw on March 19th, who brought him in?
His grandmother, Carol Purcell.
And you stated that the burns were fully healed, but there was some scarring. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Could you tell if those were interfering with him being able to move around, or did he seem back to his normal self? Could you share that with us?
He seemed back to his normal self, very active, didn't appear to have any difficulties.
Dr. Crouch, when this case started, both burns, they were in 3 to 5 days of each other, but this case came about February 12th of 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So it was over a month from when these two accidents or burns occurred before you actually saw them. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Then my only other question is, first, I say this to lawyers all the time. No lawyer asks one more question, but have you been given information about what happened during each of these burns?
I'm basically the same information that y'all been discussing. I mean, not anything.
Who told you what happened for each burn? Who gave you information about what happened?
Jesse.
And what did she tell you about the first burn, how it happened?
She said that he was crawling and had gotten his hand over onto it and had burned it.
Is that all she told you about the first one?
Yeah, just that he slipped over and that she had intentions to bring him in for us to look at it and be sure it was healing. And then the second incident happened and, they went to hospital.
So what did she tell you about how the second incident happened?
That he was cruising along, which is when they're walking on their feet using furniture, tables, those kinds of things to keep their balance. And when he got to the edge of the couch, that he lost his balance, fell over onto the furnace, and she, as quickly as she could, picked him up off of the furnace.
Did she tell you where she was located when he fell the second time?
No, she didn't give me those details.
And did she tell you what she was doing at the time that he fell the second time?
No.
Thank you, doctor. Anyone else have further questions for her?
No, Judge.
Then, can she be excused?
No objection.
Yes. Thanks again, Dr. Crouch.
Dr. Crouch, thank you for your testimony.
Yep, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anybody in my waiting room. Does anybody have any further witnesses for today?
Briefly call Jason Yates, Judge.
All right. Let me get this off my screen. All right. Mr. Yates, if you'd unmute, please.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes, sir. If you would, please raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Mr. Nowak.
Thank you, Judge. Jason, state your name.
Jason Merle Yates.
And you are dad.
Yes, sir.
Jessica's mom.
Yes, sir.
We've talked about. Tell us, you were there for the first burn. Just real briefly, tell us what happened.
I was sitting there on the edge of the couch, closest to the furnace. I had been playing with him, and he decided he wanted to crawl off, so I let him go. He grabbed one of his socks, crawled for a couple of inches, and it slipped out from under him, and he ended up rolling. And as he's going down, I'm already up and moving, scooping him up as quick as I can, and being, right there beside him. It was before he even fully hit the furnace.
I think I heard Jesse. Do you call her Jessica or Jessie?
It depends on the moment.
I don't want to know the difference. All right, I'll call her Jessica. You heard Jessica testify earlier that after that first burn, y'all made the decision to buy space heaters, correct?
Yes.
How come you didn't go out and buy them that day after that first burn?
I did not have the money.
Did you buy them the minute you had enough money?
I bought them, I would have, but CPS showed up Thursday, so I had to rush home after work. Couldn't get them then, and so Friday, the following day, I went and got them.
Now, the floor furnace, that's been pilot lights off?
As soon as the CPS visit was over, the first time she came by the house with me, I turned it off right then.
And since then, to the extent you've needed heat, you've used space heaters?
Yes, sir.
And you've got a big playpen for...
Yes, sir.
Have you noticed a difference in your electric bill since using the space heaters?
Jackson, Your Honor, it's not relevant what his financial situation is since he got that space heater.
This tank.
How much money do you make an hour?
$13.50.
Yes, sir. Are you asking the court to return to you and Jessica today?
Yes, sir, I am.
And if the court says, well, but, we're going to stay involved in your lives for a little bit just to double check up on it on both of y'all, would you be with that?
Yes, sir, I would.
And if there was any service the department could provide to y'all to make your home safer, would you be more than willing to say, yes, thank you?
I will gladly do so.
Thank you so much, Jason. Judge, I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Abbey?
Mr. Yates, my understanding from your testimony is that on the first time that he slipped and fell, you were sitting on the couch, you saw him fall onto the grate. Before he even hit the grate, you were moving to try to get him picked up.
Yes, sir.
And would you agree with me that his injuries or his burns were not as bad the first time as they were the second time?
Yes, sir.
Second time, you weren't home.
No, sir, I was at work.
And that's important for your families, for you to be working, correct?
Yes, sir.
And have you heard what Jessica has said happened the second time?
Yes, sir.
And did you hear her say that she jumped as soon as she saw him fall onto the grate?
Yes, sir.
But his burns were worse the second time.
Well, there is a difference in distance. I was right beside the gate, within inches of it. Where she was sitting would have been a couple of feet.
You got a 6-foot couch?
Well, let me just clarify, Mr. Yates. You said you were inches from the gate. Did you mean grate?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
There wasn't a gate around there anywhere, was there?
No.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Alley.
You got a 6-foot couch?
Roughly, yes.
Max, it's 2 strides. Laura?
Probably. I haven't measured.
I'll pass it. Sure.
All right. Miss Lucero?
Mr. Yates, I know that there were 2 accidents regarding that. As far as Jessica's care of, do you have any concerns, safety concerns, leaving her with her when we go off to work?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Do you believe that she's a good mom, in your opinion?
From everything I have witnessed every day of his life, yes, she is.
Pass the witness.
Miss McDaniel?
No questions, Your Honor.
All right. Anyone else have anything else for Mr. Yates?
No, sir.
Judge, I do. Please, the court. I thought of one other question I should have asked, and I apologize.
Go ahead.
Mr. Yates, the heater, the vent that was the problem that you've got turned off now, and I understand that. At the time, did you have the temperature set at about the same level on both dates of the 2 injuries?
Yes.
I'll pass it.
Not ready to make a decision on the adversary till I hear from Dr. Hanson. Mr. Yates, I'll just ask you one thing. I know the answer to it, but if the court places your child back with you, will you guarantee the court that furnace heater is not going to be used again?
You can count on that, Your Honor.
Okay. I thought that's what you'd say. We will stand in recess for today, and I apologize again, but the court's not I'm just not comfortable making a decision until I hear from another expert. All right, I will call Roberts County case, cause number 2347. This is a continuation from an adversary hearing. I have Dr. Hanson. Dr. Hanson, this is Judge Graham. If you could unmute, please. Do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Mr. Albee, you may proceed.
Dr. Hanson, briefly, can you tell me how you're employed?
I am a pediatrician, a child abuse pediatrician with Texas Tech University in Lubbock.
Are you certified in child abuse recognition?
I am board certified in child abuse pediatrics and in general pediatrics through the American Board of Pediatrics.
In your capacity, you had an opportunity to observe or review the conditions of a child by the name of...
Yes.
And when did you first come in contact with...
I believe I saw him on February 13th of this year.
And what did you come in contact, or what did you see Yates for?
I was consulted by the burn team to evaluate him due to concerns about burns he had on his body.
First of all, tell us how old the child was, or approximately.
How old he was? He was, oh goodness, you're going to test me here. I think he was somewhere around a year old.
And when you observed burn, tell me what types of burn marks you observed on this child.
So he had patterned burns in a grid pattern, so overlapping in perpendicular lines forming squares or rectangles. And he had these burns over multiple parts and planes or surfaces of his body. He had them on both hands, both forearms, his elbows extending sort of onto his upper arms, on his, I think his right knee and his left lateral thigh from basically his knee all the way up to his hip, and then on his belly as well.
Ms. Hanson, who did you talk to that gave you information concerning the burns on the child?
I spoke with his mother, and his maternal grandmother was also present.
When you talked with Rowan's mother, how did she explain the burns occurred?
She explained to me that there were two separate events during which he was burned. The first one happening somewhere 3 to 5 days before the second one. And she reported the first time crawling in their living room, and as he was crawling, he put his hand on a sock or something, and his hand slipped out from under him, and he fell onto the grate of the heater, which had a large grate in the center of their living room. And she assumes that the heater was either on at that time or had recently turned off, so the grate was hot, and he was burned that time. And she described to me that he had small burns on one of his hands, I think his knee, a small burn on his belly, and maybe one of his elbows from that event. And then the second episode of burn, which happened on the day before he came to the hospital, he'd been standing or walking, holding on to the edge of the couch, and had apparently tripped and fallen onto the grate. And she reported that she didn't see him fall, and she couldn't exactly explain to me what position he was in, but she reports picking him up off of the grate and seeing burns to all of the rest of the body that I had described before.
All right. After you talked with mom and after you looked at the child, did anything make you or concern you about the explanation that was given or the types of burns?
Yeah, so I had a few concerns. So first, the fact that he had been burned reportedly in the same way on two separate occasions where they had not intervened to prevent him from burning himself again was concerning. But more concerning to both me and the burn team, which prompted their consulting me, is that all of the patterned burns on this child's body are perfectly clear. They're crisp, they're clear. You can see exactly the pattern. Whenever accidental burns happen, whenever you touch something hot accidentally, even as a young child or infant, your body has a natural reflex to jerk your body part away from the hot thing. And when that happens, you end up smudging the lines of the burn. And his burns are sort of remarkable for the absence of any smudging. His burn marks are so crisp and clear. There's also not burns in areas that we would sort of expect to see them in a child who was trying to remove himself from a hot object. And so the pattern doesn't match exactly what we expect from a child who has the ability to roll over and crawl and try to move away from a hot object. So the lack of those findings makes us worried that what is being described to us is not actually what happened to cause the burns.
And just to reiterate, there weren't like small burns or small marks in a couple of places on this child's body. There were a number of burn marks over a large portion of his body.
That is correct. So the burns are not continuous, meaning his whole abdomen is not a burn, but his whole abdomen is covered with this grid pattern of burn.
And it's on his legs, his arms, his abdomen, and shoulder and back.
None on his back. His hands, his arms, his upper arms, his abdomen, his legs.
Do you have an opinion as to what could have caused? Do you feel like this child was in danger based upon what you observed from this child and the conversation you had with the child's mom?
I'm going to object to speculation, Your Honor.
Overrule. You can answer, doctor.
I did have concerns. Again, the fact that the burns weren't matching what we were being told made me concerned for his safety. The fact that he'd been burned on 2 separate occasions made me concerned for his safety. And then there were some additional concerns on his physical exam and his medical evaluation, not necessarily related to the burns, that also made us concerned about his overall sort of health and well-being.
And what were those?
So he had bruising on his body that was not, it wasn't a ton, but for a young infant, it was a lot. So he had bruising around both of his shoulders, on his thigh, on his chest. So kind of some unusual locations for bruising, even in a child who's learning to walk. And then his weight was quite low for his age. And when we tracked his prior growth and his prior weight gain over his entire life, he had really dropped off of his weight gain. And so he was failing to thrive and failing to gain weight.
Thank you, Dr. Hanson. Your Honor, I'll pass it.
Right, Ms. Lucero?
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Hanson, did the child have any burns, you said, on his legs? Was it the front of his legs or the back of his legs?
Yeah, so I believe it was his right leg. It's the front of his knee. On the left leg, it was kind of the side of his leg and extending to his posterior thigh, like under his butt.
So it's kind of like on the back of like the side back of his leg. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And then there was a burn on his belly, right?
That's correct.
And I understand that you say that there wasn't any smudging or anything like that. However, if a child were to fall forward and they were to roll or panic, then wouldn't that could possibly explain, would you agree with me, that the side of his leg could have gotten burned?
I do think the side of his leg could have gotten burned if he rolled onto a sitting position almost. But again, those clear, crisp burn lines are not consistent with that.
But it is possible, right? Even though there's not the smudging, it's possible because if he fell, you said normally a child would move, so if he fell forward and all of a sudden he's got burns on the side of his leg here, then he would have, it was possible he could have rolled over. Is that right?
I would expect him to roll, but I would expect the burns to look different than they looked.
Now, were you aware by speaking to the mother whether the child Rowan had a doctor in the town where they live and went to his regular appointment?
Yes,
okay.
He did have, I think it was a nurse practitioner, but he saw someone regularly and attended his appointments.
Okay. And did you review any of those records from that pediatrician?
I did review some records, yes.
And would you agree with me that there was nothing in those records that stated that he was underweight or he wasn't receiving proper care?
He was underweight. He had fallen off his growth chart. I reviewed his growth chart from his primary care doctor. I do not believe there were any concerns for his development or anything like that.
In your review of those records, you didn't see anything that stated that there was concerns regarding the parents' care of this child. Is that correct?
I do not recall seeing anything in their notes.
Now, when you talked with the mother, was she forthcoming and explaining to you what had happened to the child?
She was, absolutely.
So you're not sitting here today saying that this was an intentional, that the mother intentionally or the father, whoever, intentionally hurt this child, are you?
I would not say that, no.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Nowak, you're muted. You don't show muted, but I can't hear you. And I never have a problem hearing you, Mr. Nowak. So
I took off my mic after the last hearing because sometimes I wander around and I'm talking to myself when it's still on. Apologies to everyone.
Go ahead.
Dr. Hanson, my name is Vince Nowak, and I represent the dad, Jason Yates. We're here today, I believe, talking about second-degree burns.
That's correct.
And it was reported to you by mom that happened when the child fell onto the furnace grate on a floor, correct?
That is correct.
Now, ma'am, you understand, do you have any specialty or training experience or otherwise in in burns?
So management of burns, including recognition of burn pattern, is certainly part of child abuse pediatrics training, and to some extent, to a lesser extent, general pediatrics as well.
Do you have any idea how hot the combustion chamber in a floor furnace gets?
I do not.
Would you accept for me, ma'am, that the average temperature of a floor grate is 294 degrees with a range of 180 to 375 degrees?
I have no reason to dispute that.
And how long, if you know, how long would it take for a second degree burn to form, assuming the floor grate was 140 degrees?
So we know from studies on adults that something that's 140 degrees could cause a deep burn, so a second degree burn in a child, in less than a second.
And I think I heard you in response to Ms. Lucero's question that you don't have any evidence that this was intentional, correct?
I have no ability to determine anyone's intentions.
Excellent. And I understand that your concern is that there was no smudging or no evidence that the child tried to remove himself from that situation, correct?
That's correct.
But there were burns on the child's hands, correct?
There were burns on his hands, yes.
And there were burns on his elbows, correct?
There were burns on his elbows, yes.
And that could be consistent with a child trying to get off of that hot grate, correct?
Potentially, although the ones on his arms in particular extended well above the elbows up onto the part that you would not be putting weight on as you started to stand up.
Yes, doctor. And again, based upon your training experience, these second degree burns on a 140 degree grate would form 1 second, 2 seconds, correct?
Essentially instantaneously, yeah.
And based upon that, the evidence suggests that whoever was supervising the child at that point acted really, really fast to move that child from the grate, correct?
I don't know.
Well, if the child was on the grate for more than a couple seconds, the burns would be worse, correct?
Maybe, but maybe not. I think it depends again on how this baby has positioned himself and also where the skin is on his body and how hot the metal is. And I don't really have a way to say definitively if they'd be worse or less.
Based upon the testimony of the only eyewitness to the second burn, the child was removed from that furnace very, very quickly, like with less than 5 seconds.
I believe she told me maybe 10 seconds. She said, I think she was sitting at the other end of the couch playing a video game. She didn't see him, but she heard him. Then she responded, yes.
And again, these types of second degree burns that you saw in this child could have occurred within 1 second, correct?
They could have, yes.
Dr. Hansen, that's all I have. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Ms. McDaniel?
How are you, Dr. Hansen?
I'm good. How are you?
I want to apologize if I have a sneezing fit in the middle of our conversation.
Well, at least we have a doctor present if you need help.
Dr. Hansen, I understand what you're saying with the smudging and things like that. My question to you is, would a child of that age, would he have the ability to pick himself up or roll off of the grate at that point? Would it be a shock to him to not move off the grate? Can you explain that to me?
Sure. So he certainly has the ability to move off based on his developmental abilities to move and to roll over and to crawl. He was pulling up to stand, starting to take steps while holding on to things. He certainly had the ability to move, and his sort of brainstem reflexes, which are what make you pull your hand away from a hot thing, would have been intact by this age. Those are intact very early. And so he had the ability and the physiology to do it. Now, the second part of your question, would he have been like shocked and frozen? I don't know. Everyone responds in a different way, but I don't think that it's a reasonable expectation that this child would lie on something that is burning his skin off and not move at all.
No further questions, Your Honor.
One quick follow-up, if I may, Your Honor. Dr. Hansen, that's a lot for a young, like an infant child to be doing in 1 second, correct?
All of how you respond to,
Yes.
I mean, his brain would still do it. It's not a conscious thought process. It's a reflex.
And I'm guessing it takes about a second for that heat to transmit to the nerves and get that information to the brain.
Probably less, but I mean, it's quick.
Thank you, Dr. Hansen. Judge, that's all I have.
If he fell on the grate, the child fell on the grate, and he was picked up by somebody off of the grate, could that explain explain why there's no smudging?
It could, yes, but you would have to allow that he didn't move at all. He didn't wiggle, he didn't turn, he didn't move.
Real quick,
All
child
right.
falls on grate, mom snatches child up. That's possible, correct?
I mean, instantaneously, but again, as you've said, these burns would occur in less than a second. So if he moves at all, you should have burns in that moved place. So there should be at least some smudge or a second sort of pattern of the grate where he moves.
Thank you, Dr. Hanson.
Thank
sir.
you, Dr.
Dr. Hanson,
I
thank you for
appreciate
your time. I'll release you so you can go about the rest of your day's business.
Thank you so much.
All right. Does anyone have any further witnesses? My notes showed we were just coming back to get Dr. Hanson.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Ms. McDaniel, recommendations?
Your Honor, I would recommend that the child is returned to the parents at this time. I do not think that the department should get out of the case. I would recommend that they continue to monitor. I believe that both parents and have a very good support system outside of just his parents, Jason and Jessica, and there are other people that can help them and would also be willing to report if anything was happening too. He seems like he's healing very well. The concern has seemed to be taken care of. Also, it's getting cooler outside, and I believe that Jason and Jessica have alleviated the burn potential of the grate.
All right. Thank you. All right. That's exactly what the court's going to do today. I'm going to order that the department continue as temporary managing conservator, but I'm going to order that be returned to his parents. And I'll tell you why. The court's thinking is this: it's possible I think there may have been some neglectful supervision, but I certainly don't find that there was an intent of abuse. So I say that because when we come back for the status hearing, I would hope to see a very detailed, very limited plan of service for the parents, dealing basically with neglectful supervision, not anything to do with abuse. I don't want to start seeing a lot of services that I think are going to be very unnecessary. So, and speaking of that, we will have our status hearing on April 30th, 2025. That will be it will be by Zoom, just like today's hearing. So parties can talk to their lawyers or get on the court's online docket a day or two in advance of April 30th to see what time we'll have the hearing. So, Ms. Faith, Mr. Yates, your lawyers can explain this to you, but there's all sorts of services that can be ordered, and a lot of them are not going to apply in this case. So I'm being overly cautious just because that's my job, but we will try to get back and get that done and close this case just as quickly as we possibly can. So, all right. That will conclude this hearing. I will be back at 2:30 to call a Dallam County case. That is a final hearing on the Yanes children. Yeah. So we'll stand in recess till then. Y'all have a good rest of your week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. I'm not back till 3:30, so I'll get out of Zoom and I'll come back in.
Sounds good.
Thank you, sir. Jason,
Thank
I'll
you.
call you.